Good morning. Trust in what can be trusted. So this month we are creating a life of magic, and I just don't know whether this is going to work because this is where was having a little trouble this morning, but there we go. A little magic here. All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Woo! Was that fun? Woo. So, and this is big magic because it's based on the brilliance of Elizabeth Gilbert's big magic book, which is Creating Living Beyond Fear. And this month we are exploring the attitudes, the approaches, the habits needed to uncover our hidden treasures, to face our fears, and to trust the universe. Put that back. If anybody wants to see that a little bit later, you can. And all of this leads us to our most creative and magical lives, the lives that God intended us to live. So, to illustrate, consider this a book of your life, okay? Your life, right? Let's say if I can show you how this works. All right, so when we are living in fear rather than curiosity, and when we're afraid to uncover our hidden treasures, our lives might feel like this. Okay? Kind of blank pages in a book, right? All right. So, but when we move out of fear and start to uncover who we really are and what it is that brings us joy and fulfillment, which in turn blesses the world, then we start to be enchanted by our own inspiration and move forward with persistence and determination, knowing that we don't need permission to do that. Our lives, and they begin to look like this. So. A little bit of outline there, right? All right. And when we truly trust that which can be trusted, which is our theme for today, our lives display magic in big ways, right? Okay, so let's look at magic in big ways. Okay, all right, so there we go. So what is it that can be trusted? To answer that, it's story time. I love my stories. In fact, today there's going to be 4 stories. But the first, I want to read directly from a few pages in Big Magic, but I've actually written them onto here because it really helps me to. I'm one of those people that likes to read and write and put it down, so I put it in here. All right, so it says, my friend Dr. Robin Wall Kilmer is a botanist and an author who teaches environmental biology at the SUNY College of Environmental Science in Forestry, to Syracuse, in Syracuse, New York. Okay, obviously I didn't type very well. Her students are all fervent young environmentalists, and actually that was my field of study when I first started college. I was an environmental scientist. And they're earnest as they can be, and they're desperate to save the world. Before they can get down to business in the world saving, though, Robin often asks her students these 2 questions. The first question is, do you love nature? Doesn't love nature, right? And every hand in the room goes up. And the second question is, do you believe that nature loves you in return? Every hand in the room goes down. At which point Robin says, then we have a problem already. Without a sense of relationship, Robin warns her students that they are missing out on something incredibly important. They are missing out on their potential to become co-creators of life. As Robin puts it, the exchange of love between earth and people calls forth the creative gifts of both. The earth is not indifferent to us, but rather calling for our gifts in return for hers, the reciprocal nature of life and creativity. Inspired by this notion, I now often ask aspiring young writers the same line of questions. Do you love writing, I ask. Of course they do, duh. Then I ask, do you believe that writing loves you in return? They look at me like I should be institutionalized. Of course not, they say. Most of them report that writing is totally indifferent to them. And if they do happen to feel a reciprocal relationship with their creativity, it is usually a deeply sick relationship. In many cases, these young writers claim that writing flat out hates them. Writing messes with their heads. Writing torments them and hides from them. Writing punishes them. Writing destroys them. Writing kicks their, you know what, 10 ways to Sunday. As one young writer I know put it, he said, for me, writing is like that bitchy, beautiful girl in high school. who you always worshipped, but who only toyed with you for her own purposes. You know in your heart that she's bad news, and you should probably just walk away from her forever. But she always lures you back in, and just when you think she's finally going to be your girlfriend, she shows up at the school holding hands with the captain of the football team, pretending that she's never met you. All you can do is weep in the locked bathroom stall. Writing is evil. That being the case, I asked him, what do you want to do with your life? I want to be a writer, he said. Are you beginning to see how screwed up this is? This is what she writes. So let's get back to this morning's question. What is it that can be trusted? What is it that can be trusted? What can we trust? Or what we can trust that we are so loved by the universe and by the ideas that have landed on us that we will be supported. We'll be supported in every way, shape, and form to bring those ideas into the world. I want to say that again. We can trust that we are so loved by the universe and by the ideas that have landed on us that we will be supported in every way, shape, and form to bring those ideas out into the world. Unlike those writing students described in that story, we don't have to struggle, we don't have to fight, bleed, scratch, claw, suffer, and have painful experiences. We can trust that whatever it is that we are seeking is seeking us. Whatever it is we are seeking is seeking us. Just like when you're looking for a job. One of my affirmations was, the perfect employer is looking for me right now. Right now. Just envisioning that, it's like, wow, that's awesome. We can trust that. So from Big Magic, Gilbert writes, this is my question, and I think it's a fair one. Why would your creativity not love you? It came to you, didn't it? It drew itself near. It worked itself into you, asking for your attention and your devotion. It filled you with the desire to make and do interesting things. Creativity wanted a relationship with you. That must be for a reason, right? Do you honestly believe that creativity went through all the trouble of breaking into your consciousness only because it wanted to harm you? Because think about it. If the only thing an idea wants to do is be made manifest, then why would that idea deliberately harm you when you are the one who might be able to bring it forth? All I can tell you for certain is that my entire life has been shaped by an early decision to place my trust in that crazy notion that my work loves me as much as I love it, and that it wants to play with me as much as I want to play with it. And that this source of love and play is boundless. It's an interesting concept, isn't it? I mean, when you start thinking about that, it gives a whole nother dimension to what it is we do, what it is our work is. I absolutely love that last line. This source of love and play is boundless. Listen to the wisdom of Holmes in Creative Mind and Success. Always combine faith in the higher power with all that you do. Feel that you are being especially looked after. This is true. When a soul turns to the universe of unmanifest life, at the same time it turns towards Him. Jesus told this in the story of the prodigal son. The father saw him afar off. Always there is that inward turning to us of the parent mind when we turn to it and place ourselves in closer contact with life. Have no idea of limitation. Speak forth into mind with perfect trust. The story of the prodigal son. What a powerful analogy for the love of the divine. And in our specific conversation today, the love of the divine ideas that land on us. For those not familiar with the amazing story, are we all pretty familiar with the story of the prodigal son? Well, this is actually our second story today, but today I want you to think of the inspiration and divine ideas that land on us as the Father in this parable. So we're going to look at it just a little differently, and it's just a short synopsis. Because in the story, a father has two sons, and the younger son asks for his inheritance, right? And after wasting his fortune, the word prodigal means wastefully extravagant. Did you know that? Prodigal means wastefully extravagant. He becomes destitute, and he returns home with the intention of begging his father to let him be one of his hired servants, expecting his relationship with his father is likely severed. And the father welcomes him back and celebrates his return. And the older son refuses to participate. The father reminds the older son that one day he will inherit everything, but they should celebrate the return of the younger son because he was lost and he is now found. But we don't always trust that our inspiration and divine ideas love us so much that they only want to lavish us with the best of everything, do we? We don't always trust that. And we perhaps have never even thought to trust that our inspiration loves us so much. That it loves us so much that it's excited to have found a human vehicle to bring it into form. Because the only way that God can manifest is through us. We are the hands, we are the heart, we are the eyes, we are the way that God loves the world. So without us, nothing can happen, right? But we don't trust that. Well, why would he want me? Well, why not? I mean, you are. That is the reason you are here. And Spirit is doing everything on the invisible side of life to bring it about. God doesn't move away from us. We move away from God. Gilbert writes in Big Magic, "It is delusional of me, or is it delusional of me to place an infinite trust in a force that I cannot see, touch, or prove, a force that might not even actually exist?" Okay, for the sake of argument, let's call it totally delusional. But is it any more delusional than believing that only your suffering and your pain are authentic, or that you are alone, that you have no relationship whatsoever with the universe that created you, or that you have been singled out by destiny as specifically cursed, or that your talents were given to you for the mere purpose of destroying you? What I'm saying is this: if you're going to live your life based on delusions, and you are, because we all do, then why not at least select a delusion that is helpful? Allow me to suggest this one. The work wants to be made, and it wants to be made through you. The work wants to be made, and it wants to be made through you. And I believe we can replace the word work for dreams, aspirations, that which brings you joy and fulfillment. And we could expand the thought and turn it into a mantra that goes something like this: I trust that my dream wants to be made manifest, and it wants to be made manifest through me, and I take the steps necessary to bring it into form. I like that. I trust that my dream wants to be made manifest, and it wants to be made manifest through me, and I take the steps necessary to bring it into form. And here's our third story for an example of how this all works. A man named Roger tells the story of his 19-year-old daughter who recently finished up her semester with Up With People in Rome. Has anyone heard of Up With People? This was an organization. I heard about it in college, just briefly. So I have heard of this. This tour brought a huge change in her life. When she first left, Roger thought of going to Rome to see her finish. A few months later, he made the financial decision not to go to Rome. He was pretty bummed, but it made sense. 2 weeks before her concert, Roger was driving and listening to her CD. Tears started falling, and he heard the voice tell him, "Go to Rome. You have to be there to see her final performance." He thought, "You're crazy." But the voice wouldn't stop, and by the time he got home, he'd made the decision to go to Rome in less than 2 weeks to see his baby girl shine. There was one problem. He had just paid all of his bills, and he had no money for a trip like this. And when he says none, he meant none. He was thinking about it, and he decided that he'd been studying these principles for a few years, but had never really put them to the test, and it was time now for him to take everything that he knew and apply it here. He came home and he told his partner that they were leaving for Rome in 2 weeks. Roger was sure that he thought, his partner thought he was just darn crazy, and he didn't initially put any thought into it. So Roger started using every tool that he had. He just did a ton of subconscious work, visioning and brainstorming and prayer, and the solution started to come. Over the first 3 days, he added 3 new programs on his line of business, and money started to come in. His partner had a slight dilemma too. He was booked with clients on the dates that they were supposed to be gone. When his partner saw that Roger wasn't crazy and that he was really serious about the trip, he reluctantly asked if he should reschedule them. He was nervous. That's a risk. He trusted the universe and Roger, and he rescheduled the clients. This was a huge step for him. He's very new to the spiritual work, and he trusted, and he rescheduled the clients, and he blocked his schedule for that time that they'd be gone. Midweek, they decided to select where they would be staying in Rome. They found a place they wanted, and it turned out that Roger just so happened to have made the almost exact amount of money needed for that reservation, and it was non-refundable. They needed to book it. His partner was nervous, but Roger said, "We are going." They need to trust that everything else would come. They still did not have their plane tickets. And if you know, buying them later on in the, closer to the trip sometimes can be a little expensive. And they knew that if they spent the money on the room where they were going to stay, they would have nothing left. But Roger made the reservation anyway. And that night, Roger didn't sleep. His mind was racing 100 different ways, coming up with all these different solutions. He did a spiritual mind treatment and affirmative prayer before going to bed, and he put his subconscious assistance to work. And he woke up with 3 new program ideas. I'm not quite sure exactly what his program was, but I think he's a coach, life coach, that he could offer to his clients to continue to raise money. So the first thing in the morning, he put it all in action, and he continued to trust and make the plans to go to Rome. He asked several friends to visualize and pray for him, and he knew that an answer would come. They had buddy passes to fly to New York, and they were planning to book their flight from there to Rome. All they needed was $3,000. That's all they needed, just $3,000, right? And Roger knew that it would come in time to book the flight. At about 5:30 p.m., he received a text from someone who wanted to prepay for a seminar that he had announced that morning. And Roger asked her to help market the new programs for him, telling her about his plan to go to Rome. She said not only yes to helping him market the programs, but she said that she wanted to advance him all of their needed airfare money so that they could pay the prices for the tickets to Rome. She was a mom, and she understood the importance of seeing the daughter's final performance. This was a manifestation of everything that Roger had been looking for, and an hour later he booked their tickets, not from New York, but from Phoenix, which is where they lived. They didn't have to take that extra little trip. They didn't have to stress flying. The buddy passes are flying standby, so sometimes you get bumped, and that's not good. So Roger wasn't only given what he needed, he was given more than he needed. The angel that helped make this possible told Roger that she woke up that morning and prayed that someone who needed her help would show up in her life that day. Oh my gosh, how powerful is that? And I have heard that story from many people where they woke up and said a prayer, how can I be of help to someone today? How can you, Spirit, bring someone who needs my help today? In addition to seeing his daughter's final performance on the steps of the Vatican, Roger and his partner visited where his partner's dad was born, and they lived the manifestation of everything Roger set out to create 2 weeks before. He never doubted. 2 weeks! 2 weeks! Oh my goodness, I can't tell you how many times, when you're planning to do something, it takes months, right? He trusted that it would happen. Life is amazing, and all of this is, so usual. It's not a miracle, it's just an ordinary. It's just so usual. It's a really great story, isn't it? And when it appears like that might not be the case, when you feel discouraged or disheartened, or it seems like things just aren't going your way, because, there is the appearance of that sometimes. I'm hitting every red light. Things just aren't going my way. You can still trust and do what is put in front of you. Do what is put in front of you to do. To help you with that this morning, here's our final story from Big Magic. It's called Paint Your Bicycle. Read this one?
I haven't read that.
Okay. It's on 255, and it's about an Australian writer, poet, critic, Clive James. After an enormous failure, a play that he wrote for the London stage, which not only bombed critically, but it also ruined his family financially and cost him several dear friends, James fell into the dark morass of depression and shame. After the play closed, he did nothing but sit on the couch and stare at the wall, mortified and humiliated, while his wife somehow held the family together. He couldn't imagine how he would get up the courage to write anything else ever again. After a long spell of this funk, however, James' young daughter finally interrupted his grieving process with a mundane favor. He had 2 daughters, and they asked him if they would please do something to make their shabby old second-hand bicycles look a bit nicer. Dutifully, but not joyfully, James obeyed. He hauled himself up off the couch, and he took on the project. First, he carefully painted the girls' bikes in vivid shades of red. Then he frosted the wheel spokes with silver and stripped the seat posts or he striped them to look like barber poles. But he didn't stop there. When the paint dried, he began to add hundreds of tiny silver and gold stars, a field of exquisitely detailed constellations all over the bicycles. The girls grew impatient for him to finish, but James found that he simply could not stop painting. He just had to keep painting those stars, right? It was incredibly satisfying work, and when at last he was done, his daughters pedaled off on their magical new bikes, thrilled with the effect, while the great man sat there wondering what on earth he was going to do with himself next. The next day, his daughters brought home a little girl from the neighborhood who asked if Mr. James might please paint stars on her bicycle too. And he did it. He trusted in the request. He followed the clue. When he was done, another child showed up, and another, and another. Soon there was a line of children, all waiting for their humble bicycles to be transformed into stellar objects of art. And so it came to pass that one of the most important writers of the generation spent several weeks sitting in his driveway painting thousands and thousands of tiny stars on bicycles of every child in the area. And as he did so, he came to a slow discovery. He realized that failure has a function. It asks you whether you really want to go on making things, living your dream. And to this, and to his surprise, James realized that the answer was yes. He really did want to go on making things. From the moment he wanted to make more beautiful bicycles and stars on those bicycles for the children. But as he did so, something was healing within him. Something was coming back to life, because when the last bike had been decorated and every star in his personal cosmos had been diligently painted back into its place, Clive James at last had a thought. I will write about this one day. And in that moment, he was free. The failure had departed. The Creator had returned. By doing what was in front of him with all of his heart, he got straight back into big magic. So, that is a story that is encouraging to all of us. When we do what is right in front of us, we can get back into that flow and the gifts from